sing with their voices. Some sing with their wings or tails. Like this hummingbird, it's recorded with an acoustic camera that pinpoints, see the red, where sound comes from. Or this African broadbill. It seems to make a call with its wings. Hear it? So some Yale researchers went to Uganda to find out for certain. They recorded the flight and sound of males as they advertised themselves to females. That showed that the bird produced the call on the downstroke of its wings. Later, they tested a wing and individual feathers in a wind tunnel. They narrowed the source down to the flutter of 2 feathers. But why would birds evolve a new way to sing when they already had a perfectly good one? Hard to say. Female broadbills like it, and maybe that's reason enough.
Scientists all over the world are finding that beyond the immediate devastation, nuclear war gravely threatens our global civilization and, just possibly, the human species.
In the early 1980s, Carl Sagan gave Americans a new reason to fear nuclear war.
With darkened skies, freezing temperatures,
perpetual darkness and extreme cold in which all human life might end.
It is known as nuclear winter.
Nuclear winter added to an already prevailing sense that the superpowers were hurtling toward a point of no return.
There are 40,000 nuclear warheads in the inventories of the U.S. and the Soviet Union today. We must ensure it not be used.
The implications of nuclear winter are that we shouldn't build more, but we should build less.
Now, 3 decades later, the Cold War seems a distant memory, but the thorny issues raised by nuclear winter continue to resonate.
Nuclear winter was kind of an early volley in this battle over the question of human power to change systems and what do you do about it.
Administration officials from the president on down have been using hardline rhetoric against the Soviets all year long.
The administration's message to Moscow has been that it's not going to be business as usual anymore.
Today, in virtually every measure of military power, the Soviet Union enjoys a decided advantage. The Soviet military buildup must not be ignored.
If the United States are going to continue their course, then I'm afraid that the world is doomed to be on the brink of nuclear war.
There was a real fear in the early 80s that we were in a more dangerous period than we had been perhaps since the missile crisis in 1962.
Tens of thousands of nuclear warheads already faced off. But Cold War calculations pushed the superpowers to build even more.
There was a balance with tremendous destructive power on both sides. So we were in this very, very tenuous situation right at the edge of a cliff.
It started quietly, but it is picking up steam and maybe gathering strength. The movement, if that's the right term, to somehow bring pressure on leaders of both the United States and the Soviet Union to stop, just stop, the nuclear arms race.
That movement was called Nuclear Freeze, and as its message spread across the nation, it brought together a wide swath of Americans.
In order to stop this arms race, you first got to freeze it.
One of those was the astronomer Carl Sagan.
Imagine a room awash in gasoline, and there are 2 implacable enemies in that room. One of them has 9,000 matches. The other has 7,000 matches. Each of them is concerned about who's ahead, who's stronger. Well, that's the kind of situation we are actually in.
Sagan was a very effective communicator. I mean, he was a voice for the scientific community in some sense.
In 1983, Sagan used that popularity to draw attention to a troubling new scientific finding about nuclear war.
Dr. Carl Sagan and more than 100 other scientists have concluded that the long-term effects of nuclear war would be much worse than anyone has predicted so far.
We studied a range of consequences of various nuclear war scenarios. If I may have the first slide. High-yield nuclear weapons explosions.
Climate scientist Alan Robach was in the conference audience.
It was a very new idea that smoke from fires started by nuclear weapons would go up in the atmosphere, block out the sun, and make it cold and dark and dry at the Earth's surface, having impacts on agricultural production.
As Russian counterparts weighed in via satellite link, this view of nuclear war's destructive power took hold.
For the first time, we see that the consequences of a nuclear war might be absolutely devastating for nations far removed from the conflict.
The initial splash on this story was profound.